Okay, I don't know what the heck happened. I hit a button on my keyboard and the stream died. So sorry about that. Ah, ah. Give me 1 sec to fix everything. Dang nabbit. Dang a Rooney. Give me 1 sec. Okay, is it working or I do not know if it. Give me Did this? I'm trying to figure out. Did the stream die or is it working? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that. I'm just gonna hopefully. Oh, crud. Oh no! What have I done? Okay. Apparent. Give me 1 second to fix something real quick. Okay, now we're cooking with fire. So I'm just gonna reread the page that I screwed up on, and hopefully I didn't cut myself off when I was mid sentence. The safest way to me, this is my specialty. Wakaru stuck out his pinky with a hearty laugh. You, I don't get it. What do you mean? Females, I especially like 'em young. I'm not talking about the human ones, though. Goblins, then? He was a goblin himself, so I guess it wouldn't be strange for him to specialize in going after the little lowly goblins. Wakaru gaped. What? No, what are you talking about? I can't just go around nabbing goblin girls. The village chief would have my head. Then what do you mean? Kobolds, shooter. The females usually travel around with kids, and if you attack a group of them, there's a pretty good chance the females will get left behind. Oh, duh. Fantasy world. Females could mean just about anything. What are kobolds like? Come on, you serious? They're like little monkey people, but with yappy jackal heads. It sounded like the kobolds he was talking about weren't much different from the ones I knew from folklore, games, and the like. So, you capture them. He went on, they breed like rabbits, and they're a pain in the ass, always ruining our farmlands. Kobolds are pests, then. They were, and Wakaru treated them that way. My good goblin friend used to capture kobolds as bait by killing them. It felt crappy, but the kobolds put the livelihood of the whole village in danger. My uncle used to capture the weasels that would attack his chickens as well, so it wasn't like I didn't get it. They attack the livestock too. Nothing good comes to kobolds, and the awful things are dumber than a box of rocks. They're beasts after all. What happens after killing the kobold? We use them as bait to lure out the real prize, lynxes. Their fur is some real high quality stuff, and you can sell them for a good price to the merchants. Lynxes? Was that a magical thing? No, wait. They were like those big cats from my world, right? Doesn't that mean we can't get any meat from the kobolds? Nah, kobolds aren't my real target. I have my fair share of deer and rabbits for meat. They're good eating, and you can find them all over Ape Gut. Deer and rabbits, gotcha. Deer around here aren't that big, so you gotta take them down even if you... So you can take them down even if you're all on your own. Now come now. Now come on. Follow me. He gave me a pat on the back, pulled out his machete, and started hacking through the foliage, trekking deeper into the forest. I'm not racist. I have goblin friends. Yes, exactly. And There I was, hiking myself in the thick overgrowth of the forest. According to Wawakaro, herbivores pass through all the time, not just deer and wild pigs either. Kobolds, because they have to refresh us on material that we read previously on the same page. That's just how literature works. How good are you with a bow? Wawakaru asked. We took our bows off our backs and readied them to fire, should our target cross our paths. As for me being any good at one, well, I played a role in an Enka folk singer's performance as a hunter back when I was job hunting. The bow I used then was made of carbon, but I never ended up firing the thing. I used to have a longbow before, so this one feels a bit different, I said, which was almost not a lie. Gotcha. You're a warrior after all, so I get it. Don't underestimate a nice short bow, though. Doesn't matter if you're experienced or not. It only takes a little getting used to, and then it's a breeze. Bows were for bleeding your prey dry, and the spear was to put them out of their misery. Handling poles was my forte, so the spear would be no problem. The short bow, on the other hand... I'd love to practice firing it sometime. Yeah, I bet. Let's meet our quota for the day, and I'd be happy to help. Bugs feasted on my way too bare skin as we waited, and waited, there rustling. And it was just another rabbit. How long had we been out there? We left the village in the early hours of the morning, but it must have been nearly noon. Wawakaru was more than willing to shoot the breeze with me, but he wasn't so talkative as we hid in the forest underbrush. We decided to eat our lunches a bit early. The rye bread just made me incredibly thirsty. All of that, on top of getting profoundly itchy in the forest thickets, the bug bites weren't helping, and worse, I was basically naked. The rocks and pebbles on the ground dug into my butt, and the grass rubbed against my skin, leaving tiny cuts. What kind of grass are you sitting on? It was driving me nuts. I'd have to ask Wawakaru or Cassandra for some advice on how to be even a little less uncomfortable next time. At the time, I just smeared mud on my skin as a kind of makeshift solution. You're pretty resourceful, huh? Wawakaru said, raising his eyebrows and watching me apply my earthly anti-itch cream. I learned it back when I went camping with a portable fire pump. A fire what? One time when I worked at the apparel shop, my manager made us take part in a surprise attack on another airsoft team who were camping... What? One time when I worked at the apparel shop, my manager made us take part in a surprise attack against another airsoft team who were camping in the mountains nearby. So let me get this straight. You worked at an apparel shop, and your job at an apparel shop doubled as your airsoft team. If I'm comprehending this correctly. I went marching through the mountains, decked out in full combat gear, carrying a fire pump and a 2-liter water bottle. Bugs were just as hungry for my sweet flesh back then. We had this stuff called bug juice that was supposed to act as a repellent, but it did absolutely jack squat. Instead, we slathered mud all over any exposed skin as a countermeasure. It didn't protect us all day, but it kept the bugs from eating us alive. A fire pump, I said, is a magic tool used to put out fires. Wait, you're a warrior and you can use magic? Nah, not casting magic, just using magic tools. Anyone can do that. Kobold! And kobolds. Everywhere, buzzy, yappy kobolds must have approached us while we were talking. I almost yelped, but Wawakaru's hand shot over my mouth. They didn't seem to notice us at all. They were probably en route to find water or food or something. Wawakaru poked me with his elbow, signaling that I should be ready with my spear. Not like I could be the one using the bow yet. As he whispered and signaled instructions, Wawakaru readied his bow and took aim. His movements were fluid and precise, thoroughly entrancing technique. Kobold! The boss of the group of kobolds, noticeably bigger than the rest, let out a howl to signal his comrades to gather around him. I grinned. Yeah, this first hunt was gonna go well. The goblin huntsman Wawakaru cut a gallant figure. His bowstring stretched taut as he knocked an arrow from the shadowed bushes, and snap! Let it fly. The arrow dug into a female kobold. Korgia! A high-pitched screech rose from the wounded kobold. Wawakaru kept calm, grabbing another arrow he had left by his feet, released it. Had to be 5 seconds, maybe less. The pack panicked. A second arrow found its mark as well, and the children close to the target went running back to their mother. The boss kobold swung its stick, scanning its surroundings, and freezing as it saw the rush where Wawakaru and I hid. "All right, go get him, shooter!" Wawakaru roared as his third arrow pierced another kobold. I picked up my spear with one hand and charged. While we were hiding in the bushes, Wawakaru told me that once he let loose with the arrows, my job was to rush in with my spear. Though kobolds were extremely cautious creatures, they weren't very attentive. They're extremely cautious, but they're not attentive. Okay, that makes sense. That makes logical sense. Okay. If they found something that piqued their curiosity, they would become completely fixated. Not too surprising if you think about it. I mean, we're talking dead-headed monkeys here. I'm sorry, dog-headed monkeys here. Kobolds were fairly weak on their own, so they formed packs to live together. Sure, they could use tools to protect themselves, but if they ever picked on somebody they couldn't take, they'd panic. Wawakaru told me that kobolds only showed the bare minimum when it came to intelligence. Basically, whenever they faced something genuinely dangerous, they were just smart enough to fly into a panic about it. Sure, they could be sly and cunning if a fight was going their way, but their brains clicked off the moment the tide turned against them. Which is totally unlike any other intelligent species, right? Right. Let's just keep telling ourselves that. Is that a critique on society? Did this book really go, we live in a society here, or was I just reading too much into it? Am I giving this book too much credit? Lord only knows. Okay. Anyway, that's why I kept out of the bushes and started really raising hell. If I gave the kobolds time to react, they might decide to try to fight back. The wilder I acted, the less likely that was. Booga booga! The boss kobold howled. It must have been some kind of order in koboldish, or whatever you'd call it, because several other kobolds lunged toward me as the young and the females ran away. I took a stance and drove my spear straight into the chest of the kobold leading the charge. The blade slid into its flesh, wet and sickening. Nothing like karate. Oh, Lord. I pulled it out right before the blade stuck in the contracting muscles. I'd heard those things happen when humans get shot or stabbed in all kinds of ways. Warily, I closed the gap between me and the kobold leader. "The boss is coming your way, shooter!" Wawakaru cried. The boss kobold, incidentally wearing a much nicer loincloth than mine, rushed at me, brandishing a razor-sharp wooden stick. Mud and dirt sprayed in all directions as the boss kobold's spear struck the earth. The guy was fast and looked pretty strong to boot. I didn't have to take him down, though. All I had to do was make him afraid of me. "Take this, you damn dirty ape!" Times like these, you gotta be assertive. And although kobolds weren't just primates, everything about them reminded me of something just barely past monkeys on the evolutionary ladder. With a mighty shout, I thrust my spear forward towards the boss kobold. He dodged. I didn't care. More kobolds appeared on the other side of me, but I had my spear ready and waiting. "Raka kabal!" The boss kobold howled as they made their retreat, dragging a kobold I'd killed with them. The children and females scampered after them. Once again, Apegut Forest was silence. "Nice going, just about what I'd expect from a warrior like you, shooter," said Wawakaru. He switched to his spear, and he looked carefully out at his surroundings as he turned one of the kobolds over with his foot. I just took a long, ragged breath. It was over. But, unfortunately, this book is not. "We bagged ourselves a grown male and a younger female. Usually I'd only be able to take down a female by myself. You just got us twice the bait." "I'd never done something like that before," I said. I was actually panicking a little, to be honest. "You serious? You handled yourself pretty well out there." "How would you deal with a whole group of kobolds when you were hunting alone? Like, assuming you managed to take one down with the arrows first." What would you do next? I'd switch to my spear right after my first arrow and rush straight for the head honcho. You want to try to hurt them before they get a chance to think of anything sneaky. I didn't bother with anyone else. Made sense. Hit the big guy, strike fear in the entire pack, and get them running away all on their own. Wakaru beamed devilishly before unsheathing his machete and starting to slice up one of the kobolds. So there's no point in really going after them then. Yup. You went after the head honcho's lackeys too, but it's not about numbers. It's all about speed. That was my bad. Sorry. Next time, I want you to just focus on the boss. They're usually tougher than the rest, so it'd be a pretty much even match for a goblin like me. I'd at least be able to mess him up if we took them by surprise. An injured kobold is basically helpless, so when you get the ball rolling, it usually ends the same way. The last and only time I was in a fight this big was when I worked at a Japanese barbecue restaurant. Oh, here we go. A couple of drunk customers got into a scuffle. I jumped in and got them to stop with a few good hits, but I ended up getting fired because of it. I wonder how that manager's doing. I mean, you can't just go into a restaurant and beat people up. Yes, that is means for firemen. Wakaru ran his machete across a kobold throat. Fresh blood oozed from the wound. He grabbed the body by the ankles and began dragging it across the ground. What are you doing? Spreading the sense of blood. Grab our stuff. We're going to get our trap ready. I gathered our equipment and followed. The trap was a simple snare, the kind with a rope that would loop around our unfortunate victim's leg and hoist them up into the air. Any flimsy rope wouldn't be enough to handle something like a lynx, so we were working with a sturdy wire. It was a primitive kind of snare, made to tighten around whatever sprung into the trap. Maybe that was the limit of the technology here, or maybe better traps cost too much for a tiny village. I'd have to ask, because a bear trap would be a damn lifesaver. Seems like a pretty well thought out trap, I said. It may be simple, but let's say our prey gets caught and starts thrashing. That wire's just gonna dig deeper into their leg. And we're setting up a bunch. We have to. That's the trade-off for them being so simple. We set them, cover them, tie the front of the trap to a stake or tree branch, and boom, snap, thrash, dig, all that good stuff. You're really an old hand at this, I said, admiring Wakaru's work as I helped get the traps together. I should hope so after all these years. Don't get me wrong, I'd love a good bear trap instead, but the governor has to approve or we'd be breaking the law. Convenient. He answered my question before I could even ask. The answer made sense too. Animal rights groups back in my world argued that bear traps were inhumane, which got those things tied up in red tape there too. That's why we're only allowed to use these when we're hunting big game, Wakaru continued. Like wyverns. Gotcha. Where does the governor live? In the village chief's manor, obviously. The village chief is the governor. She's been granted knighthood, which makes her the leader around these parts. Really? That true? This is the frontier. Who else would be the governor? Damn. So the village chief was a real-life knight? My mind hurtled back to some unique manga. My mind hurtled back to some ... unique manga about proud lady knights being unladylike with some very robust orcs. Was that a real knight thing? It'd be super tacky to ask, right? Right? That was not paraphrased. That's literally what this fucking book said, and I'm really upset about that. Hey man, why are you holding your crotch? Hello? Wire, kobold traps, let's go! Nothing weird's happening. Everything's fine. Let's go. Look, Shuda Jr. is a sensitive guy, you know? Way too sensitive if you asked me, especially when it came to my overactive imagination. After we set up snares in a couple spots, the look on Wakaru's face said everything before he spoke a word. We'd done a good day's work. That'll be it for today, so let's head back. We're leaving already? We're not gonna nab some rabbits or something? Only if we see him on the way back. We really have to wait for a lynx to trip into our snares. It'll take some time for the scent of the blood to spread throughout the forest. Our work finished, Wakaru went back to his normal talkative self. He asked question after question. You slept with Cassandra yet? Was a big one. And while we were at it, how many kids do you want? Along with the extremely specific but much appreciated. If you want to enjoy that newlywed life for a bit, why'd you... Oh my god. Oh my god. What the fuck? If you want to enjoy that newlywed life for a bit, would you like me to show you to the priest, get you some decent birth control stuff? I did my best to keep it casual. No messing around yet. We're gonna try it out as friends first. Oh, but I have seen her going number 2 before. I know it doesn't count, and it's nothing to be embarrassed about since we're married. But she did not seem happy about it. She was angry the whole time, matter of fact. So you're telling me this absolute gentleman was married to a woman for less than 48 hours and watched her poop, and then told some guy that he literally just met about watching her poop. Mind you, he's 32 and she's 15 or 16. It's legal in Japan. It's legal in Japan. That's not okay, but it's legal in Japan. Give me a second. I just need to calm down. When I finally came home, I found out that my new wife wasn't exactly on the edge of her seat waiting for me. I'm home and ready for... Sorry, wrong voice. I really should start like doing stupid accents for these characters, so it's easier to like differentiate them, because I can only do so many male sounding voices, but whatever. I'm home and I'm ready for dinner. Saw that smoke coming up from the chimney and I figured it's almost ready. Eep! When I pushed the front door of our little cabin open, I saw Cassandra staring up at me from her bed, eyes wide with shock. She froze, curled up tight with both hands between her thighs for some reason. Are you shitting me? Please, 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 please. Please don't make me read a scene that involves an underage child masturbating in front of a 30-year-old man. Please tell me that's not what I'm about to read. Welcome back. Yeah, I'm back. That smoke, you weren't cooking? No, I was heating the water so you could wash yourself. Oh, that sounds great. I could use a good wash. Think I'll just go ahead and get going. I let all my hunting gear drop to the floor. I took the wooden bucket and poured the scalding water into the bath cauldron. Cassandra stood up from the bed. She watched me. As I reached to undo her father's old vest, she approached me. Cautiously, she reached out to take it. Our hands touched, and she pulled back suddenly and dashed to a corner of the room. Cassandra's fingers were moist for some... Sweet mother of God. Why? 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 Cassandra's fingers were moist for some reason, a bit sticky too. She shifted, looking away from me and pressing herself into the corner. Weird, wet hand, skittish run to the corner. I didn't know this culture, but it was clear that she wasn't warming up to me at all. She must have hated that order from the village chief to marry me. Day 2 of newlywed life, 32 years old, and just now it hits me that my wife probably isn't warming up to me because I'm naked. Yes, that is the reason. The next morning, I found Wakaru waiting for me outside in a full hunter attire, spear in hand. Morning, Wakaru. You headed out somewhere? Catching lynxes in our traps, I hope, and you're coming with me. Think we'll get one soon? Who knows? Wakaru replied with a snort. The smell of blood should be spreading through the forest by now. Lynxes love blood. They've got to be close by. Right, got it. Then I guess I'll be off, I said, bidding farewell to my wife. Be careful out there. Cassandra saw us off. Before long, Wakaru and I were out hunting. Before long, Wakaru and I were in our hunting ground once more. Can I just take a moment to pause and say that This book is terrible. I don't condone any of the things that happen in it. I do not condone any of the things the author deems necessary to the plot of this story. I didn't expect this to have a relationship with an underage girl. I should have expected it. I honestly, would it surprise you that Buck Naked in Another World, a isekai light novel, had illicit relationships with a minor? It shouldn't, but I don't know why. I just didn't see that coming, and I'm sorry. Okay. The lynxes in the forest were usually solitary. Well, Wakaru told me, and they tended to have their own territories. Yesterday, we placed our snares on a spot where a bunch of their territories intersect with each other. Usually, the males try to avoid that, since it leads to some pretty nasty fights between them. Cats, I said suddenly. They're like a bunch of house cats. Bigger, sure, but you're not wrong. Male and female lynxes, on the other hand, tend to have territories that overlap each other, but that's because they gotta get Male and female lynxes, on the other hand, tend to have territories that overlap each other, but that's because they gotta get that sweet pussycat lovin'. But Wakaru grinned. Aw, shit. So, he said, how are things going with Cassandra? Slowly. Even that was overstating it. She always looked away when I smiled. At least she's warming up to you. Come on, have you looked at us? I've known Cassandra for a long, long time, man. This isn't a big village, you know? Trust me. My wife seemed unhappy at times, but she was damn cute. I hoped Wakaru was right. We were on our way to our snares when Wakaru suddenly stopped me. Something wrong? These footprints, they're fresh. And gigantic, too. These cat-like footprints had to be the size of a girl's hand. Maybe bigger. How oddly specific. A girl's hand. These are some pretty big footprints. Is it a lynx? I asked tentatively. Gotta be. Outside of bears and wyverns, they're the biggest animals around here, Wakaru said, gazing out at the trail of... Time to turn the page. Prints? Man, these things were huge, even for fantasy world junk. Lion-sized, tiger-sized, maybe bigger. With a nod, we crouched and stalked along the trail. Wakaru fell quiet again. Back to hunter mode, I guess. The lynx could be anywhere. I gripped my spear tightly. No point in using the bow until I knew what I was doing, so I wanted to have something ready in case we found the lynx. Getting caught flat-footed by something so fast would be trouble. After following the tracks for a bit, Wakaru stopped, crouched low. These prints haven't dried yet, he whispered. These prints haven't dried yet, he whispered. I was on edge now. The lynx must have been stalking close to our snare traps. Sure, they smelled the cobalt blood, but they were playing it safe for now. Clever girl. All at once, Wakaru bolted upright and ready to spear. Shoot her! There! I whipped out my own spear just in time. A massive, snarling, cat-like creature beast rose before me. It was just enormous, big as a tiger, and its roar was as much like a pussycat's as a wolverine's. just pretend to that sound. That'll work. The lynx leapt from the bushes and swiped at me with a muscled front leg, its obsidian claws glinting in the sparse light. One hit from that would have been it. I rolled out of the way, pausing only to land a glancing blow on its flank. Fast as it was big. You could telegraph those movements. Wait for it, then wait for when it readied the next move, and there, right there, that's your window. Rising from my roll, I spun around. The lynx charged. I aimed a solid thrust as it came at me. No time to put power into it, not with such a short distance. I aimed a solid thrust as it came at me. No time to put power into it, Not with such a short distance, but I didn't have time to complain. Okay. So this individual in this story is a karate connoisseur, all right? So he supposedly knows martial arts. I get that he has a spear or a staff. No, it's a spear. It's got a thing on top. But you would have, the closer it is, the more power you'd have. Like, that's basic physics, and that's like lesson one of martial arts. Even though it's a staff that's long, you're going to. Okay. Do I have to. Give me one sec. I will be right back. I need to demonstrate how bullshit this guy is. 1 second. No. I'm sorry. I forgot my sister's violent dog is in our house and nearly got attacked. Anywho, let me reread what I just read and then demonstrate why this is bullshit. Okay? Rising from my roll, I spun around. The lynx charged. I aimed a solid thrust as it came at me. I'm assuming that the person is aiming with the spear. No time to put any power into it. Not with such a short distance. But I didn't have time to complain. Okay. So, this is not a spear, it's a staff. But were I to thrust with it, one of the rules of martial arts is when you attack something, you go through the target, not. Okay, so when you're like pulling your punches, that's when your target is the center of whatever you're trying to hit. But when you're actually like hitting something, you go through it. So like when you're breaking a board, like board breaking, which is like simulating breaking ribs, your target isn't the board that you're hitting. It is through the board. Your target is behind the board. So the closer you are to your target, like if you have time to like chamber, that will be, which is like right here. So as long as you can go from like there to there, which it'd be difficult not to, in this context, your punch has power. The further your arm goes away from you, or whatever you're holding goes away from you, the weaker your attack will be. So, if I go boom with that, well, let me do it this way. If I go boom with that, with a staff, the staff ends, like, we see where it ends? That's not the strongest part of the attack. The strongest part of the attack is like right here, right? So, the closer this stupid tiger is to this person, the harder he will hit. You see what I'm saying? So, what I'm trying to say is that's bullshit. That book is bullshit, and it's really angering me. So I'm going to just, anytime that this character says something that's just wrong, blatantly wrong, I will demonstrate why it is blatantly wrong. So, yeah. Physics. 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 Wait. Just put that bad boy over there. And that was my staff, Excalibur. He is a heavy lad, but I like him. Anywho. No time to put power into it, not with such a short distance, but I didn't have time to complain. The tip of the spear vanished into the back of the inside of the lynx. Wow, that's a mouthful. The tip of the spear vanished into the black inside of the lynx's mouth. The shock of impact shuddered through my right hand. Okay, I'm gonna assume that he's left-handed. I'm just gonna assume. Okay, for the sake of the argument, we're gonna say he's left-handed, because if he's right-handed, then that's not how, that wouldn't be where you feel. The shock of impact shuddered through my right hand. I let go of the spear and jumped back to avoid the death spasm of the lynx's razor claws. The spear dug into its mouth, the point gleaming red through the back of its skull. It thrashed absently, agonized, before falling to the ground where it twitched and seized. You okay, Shooter? I took a deep breath. Whoa, close, huh? I'm okay. Not hurt, at least. You took that lynx out with just one blow. Okay, I get that it's impressive that he aimed for the thing's mouth and took it out with one attack. Cool beans. But, again, I don't know how I don't know how spears work. I've never put a knife on the tip of my staff. But if you hit something correctly with a staff, with the amount of force, what I'm trying to say is it's not that hard to kill something. I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying that if you hit something correctly, which is literally what you learn how to do in martial arts, how to hit something correctly in the way that makes all of your attacks have as much power behind them as they can, you are capable of killing something. Like, this isn't me like flexing or threatening or anything like that. I'm just stating a fact. So, the author of this book does not know how things work. And it's like in martial arts, we have to put more emphasis on pulling our punches and defending ourselves in ways that doesn't hurt somebody permanently than practicing to hurt someone permanently, if that makes any sense. Like, we actively learn restraint more so than going hard. Like, we all have the ability to go hard. Once you learn the technique, hitting something with hard enough force to actually kill it is not the hard part. It's being able to attack someone with enough force to restrain them or stop them from attacking you without permanently hurting them. And I'm just going to continue reading. I'm done. The lynx was still breathing. This was a younger one, Wakaru told me. He drew his machete and, without hesitating, slit its jugular to put it out of its misery. Okay. Judging by its fur, I'd say he's somewhere between 3 and 5 years old. That's a good profit, long as we carve him up nice and proper. Bit smaller than I thought, though. The spots on a more mature lynx would be a lot bigger. I guess it's lucky for me that was a young one then. I'd hate to face off against a full-grown adult. You're right about that. Being a hunter means weighing your risks. Get greedy and get killed. Play it safe and you can hunt another day. We wouldn't want to send you home to Cassandra in a pine box, you know. I bowed. It was good advice from a veteran hunter. Since I sometimes hunt male lynxes, other males start to move in this way from the deeper parts of the forest. Of course, all I do then is hunt them down, and the cycle continues. Man, I'm looking forward to seeing what we get tomorrow, Wakaru said. He slapped me on the back, laughing. We never imagined we'd get our lynx while we were on our way to check those traps. It was one lucky haul. We strung up the lynx between our two spears and decided to head back for the day. After coming home, I started skinning the lynx with a walkaroo. Cassandra was shocked when she came home and saw us. Your husband's a real catch, Cassandra. This guy just took out a lynx with one strike. Just what you'd expect from a vet in the warrior business. That's amazing. All I could do in the face of all these compliments was sheepishly scratch at my head, maybe give a few quick bows of gratitude. Make sure and take good care of him, will ya? Said Wawaku. He's gonna make it big someday, I tell ya. I will. I was feeling pretty good from all this praise I was getting, so I turned to look at my wife. Maybe today was my lucky day. And she promptly turned to look at me, away from me in kind, but no way was I going to let that discourage me. And thus concludes chapter 1. We are 80 pages into this book that should not have been published. And it is 373 pages, or 374 pages long. Let me see how many chapters it has real quick. Oh no. Oh no. Okay, what the fuck? I have never in my life seen, maybe it's because I've only like read good light novels, but never before have I seen a book with side stories between chapters. And hello, King Raid. I'm sorry. We're only on chapter 1. Jesus Christ. Thus far, I will say chapter 1 was a lot more bearable than the prologue. As much as I hated it, this definitely was a lot less redundant than the first part of it. Like, he didn't explain that he was wearing a loincloth 3 times on the same page. So, yeah, give me a sec. I'm trying not to like kill my throat. All right, here we go. Chapter 2, Wyvern Hunters. And for those of you new, this is what the chapter title pages look like. Very necessary detail. Probably the only thing about this book that I like genuinely was like about. In my warm blanket, alone in my new bed, I dreamed. I was walking through the shopping district in front of the train station, dressed in my usual kind of outfit, a long-sleeve shirt with a t-shirt underneath, the official work pants my employer made me wear, and my trusty backpack. Faintly, I could make out my favorite bar before me, and that's when I realized that this was probably it. The last moments of my old life. I'd been thirsting for a drink after work, so of course I picked my favorite cheapo dive. I didn't hate drinking at home, but using my meager part-time wages for a cheap after-work special, chatting up pretty waitresses, just unwinding, perfection. So there I was, about to step inside the bar, and that was it. That was all I remembered. Did I die or something? Get hit by a car? This bar stood before me, the narrow roads of the shopping district blurring with heavy traffic. No one veered off to hit me. And in the bar, I didn't go in. I turned around, as a matter of fact, and that's when my dream ended. My name is Yoshida Shuda. I'm 32. Also, I'm stuck in another world learning to hunt. I have to ask a serious question. Like, I'm not familiar enough with light novels to be sure, but they're not serialized like manga, right? Like, the chapters of light novels, like, it's all released in one book. It's all published together at once, not like in chapters that are released weekly in like a magazine or something. I don't think. Let me look that up real quick, because if that is the case, if like are light novels serialized. Okay, so what I've learned is that light novels are not serialized. This was all published at one time, right? Which means the author really thought that whoever's reading this book needs to be refreshed every chapter as to what's going on. Okay, cool. My name is Yoshida Shida. I'm 32. Also, I'm stuck in another world learning to hunt. After trading good mornings with my wife, I grabbed my gardening hoe and headed out the door. She asked me to tend to the vegetable patch out front, and I was happy to oblige. There'd be no one to help take care of it when she was living alone, and so the whole thing was in bad shape. Cassandra said it was near the end of April. Okay. The good weather rolled in at February's end when the mountain snow began to melt. It was supposedly too late to start plowing now, but it wasn't like Cassandra couldn't have done anything about that on her own. Back when she was alone, she planted potatoes. They were easy to get a hold of, cold resistant, and didn't take too much water. Alright, so we've established that this other world has months like our world. So it has the same months and the same days and weeks and whatever. Okay, two things. One, if the months July and August exist, then we actually no. Firstly, the fact that they have months that are like ours means that they have the same star systems because the months were based off of like astrology bullshit initially, right? And like months just didn't come out of nowhere. That was people observing like the cycles of the moon and stuff like that, and that's how we established months, right? That being said, the months that we currently have aren't accurate to the astrological calendar, like the cycles of like the stars and the moon and everything, because we have 2 extra months. So we should have 10 months, and the months should be longer. But because we have July and August, because Augustus or Julius Caesar, something, I can't remember who it was, if it was him or like Augustus, put 2 extra months into the calendar, July and August, to in their honor or some shit, and now we have them still to this day. So if those 2 months exist in this universe, in this book, like I'm just not even gonna pretend that it's like, just ignore the fact that it's written poorly. But if July and August exists, that means Julius Caesar and Augustus exist in whatever universe this man has been transported to. So just keep that in mind. So we've established that their world has the same the same star cycles as our world. And if they say anything about the stars being different, that's something's wrong. And I'm just going to keep an eye out for those 2 months being mentioned. So I'm sorry. Let's continue. Cassandra said it was near the end of April. Oh, wait. But back when she was alone, she planted potatoes. They were easy to get a hold of, cold resistant, and didn't need too much water. I swung my hoe into the earth, worked to till nearly barren soil. Cassandra had 4 plots of land for farming out front. Since one of them already had potatoes in it, I decided to tend to the one in front of the potato patch. If I was going to make Cassandra's life easier, I wanted to do it as soon as possible. That meant working at this every single day. That's what it means to be a man, after all. As I tended to the dry soil, I heard a familiar voice call out. "What do you think you're doing so early in the morning?" It was Will Walkero, of course, bow strapped to his back and ready to go. "Morning, that time already?" Lynxes are nocturnal, so the trap could have snagged one by now. Yeah, it'd be nice if we could deal with that. You know what? Okay, for the sake of my throat, our protagonist is now gonna have a deep southern accent because I can't do the scratchy thing anymore without hurting myself. Yeah, it'd be nice if we could deal with that one already. Oh God, I don't even know what accent I'm trying to do. Yeah, it'd be nice if we could deal with that one already got. Yeah, it'd be nice if we could deal with one that already got itself caught. And with that, I had to leave the field half tended so I could check on the snare traps. Hey, I'm heading out again. I called out to my wife. Stay here until I get back, okay? Shouldn't I tend to the fields? I'll take care of that when I get back. You just sit tight and try not to burn the house down. It's not like I expect you to be hammering away at an anvil while I'm gone or anything. Blacksmithing? I've never done that before. Wait, is she seriously taking my joke seriously? Or was this some kind of comeback, like saying that she already handles the laundry and cooking just fine, and I shouldn't underestimate her? Maybe this was her way of telling me that, like, I may not be the greatest, but I do my best kind of thing. Which is cute, I'll admit. Good weapon of choice. I'll come help out when I'm back, I said. Thank you. Be more careful out there. I said my goodbyes to Cassandra, and Walker and I headed into the forest together. Okay, maybe the southern accent isn't working. Howdy. How do I do an accent? I don't even know. Okay, that'll work. So, you think you can forget about me and just start flirting? You dog, you. Will Walker, who ribs at me as we walk. You call that flirting? We haven't even held hands yet. Everything's still so awkward. Hold up. You two still haven't gotten it on? You swing the other way or something? Nah, I'm straight as an arrow. But man, every time I try to look at her, she seems freaked out or something. You're naked, my guy. Hey, don't downplay the vest. You're almost naked. Yeah, fair. I scratched at my crotch and continued down the path. Well, Wakaru told me that he didn't use hunting dogs, since trying to train them and keep them fed was time he didn't have. All of the village's hunting dogs were managed by a goblin named Sakicho, the leader of the hunters. Goblins aren't usually held in the highest esteem, said Wakaru. No matter which village you're in, we're usually only allowed to be farmers, woodcutters, or hunters. Damn, sounds like you guys have it rough. The really talented goblins all leave town and go off to become mercenaries or adventurers, living it up and relying on nobody else. And you did it? Course not. What the hell kind of person abandons their family? He snorted indignantly. Say I'll leave town. What happens to the rest of my brethren? Their families and mine. Hunters already have it bad enough as it is. If we don't bring in any game, then the villagers see us as a bunch of freeloaders, and it gets really rough in the winter. According to him, the heavy winter snow blocked off the deeper parts of the forest. That meant hunters settled for hunting deer when the snowdrifts were less dense. And these deer were hell to catch. They gathered in a vast, wide-open area where there weren't many spots for the hunters to lie in wait. Then how do you survive when you can't hunt? Side gigs, make boots or sharpen spears, fashion arrows, whatever. Winter is the time for blacksmithing, I tell ya. Wow, you even smith stuff? The old dwarf smith in the village keeps busy. So hunters like us try to stay self-reliant. Here, take a look at this. Well, Wakaru took an arrow from his quiver and showed it to me. You can make your own arrowheads out of stone. Okay. From what I'd heard, stone arrowheads are way better for taking out animals than ones made of metal. These things really dig into animal hide. Iron arrowheads may have become the standard once they were easy to mass produce, but those weren't for animals. They were for people. You know what? I don't know anything about hunting, so I'm just going to let that go. I'd assume the fur makes it more difficult. I'm just going to pretend, just take this author at his word and assume that's correct. That aside, it surprised me to learn how insecure the life of a hunter was. Coming upon our first snare in the ape-gut forest drove it home. It managed to grab the bait without setting off the trap, Wakaru said with a sigh. He crouched to search where the snare was placed, but only made a face when he found tracks in the dirt. No good, he muttered. And our first lynx hunt yesterday went so well. These tracks showed that the lynx dragged the kobold body away from the trap, probably back to its nest. The second trap had gone off without catching anything either. Well, shit, Wakaru muttered. Yeah, bad luck. It happens when you go hunting every day. You can live off a big haul for a while. Luck turns as it wants. We got lucky last time. We ain't lucky today. Being a hunter was pretty similar to a part-time job in that way. No, it's not. No. There was something comforting about all that familiarity, whether it was good or bad. The only significant difference was being buck naked all the time in this world, which I generally avoid back home. Is there any way to lure that lynx out and wait? Is there any way to lure that lynx out and wait to get the jump on him? I asked. Once they're done raising their kitten, sure. Right now, they're too cautious. Gotcha. Smart. My uncle said something similar about never messing with a mother bear when she had her cubs around. Bears were dangerous even for the most experienced of hunters, so I didn't even want to think about a massive, pissed-off mama lynx. On our way back home, though, we ended up bagging ourselves a fox. We were almost back to the village when I spotted it. Let's get him, shooter, Wakaru roared. He whipped the short bow from his back, knocked an arrow into the string in one fluid motion, and I hurried to follow along with my own bow. Our target was close, probably just 30 feet away. 2 arrows sped towards the petrified fox. My arrow missed its mark, but Wakaru's stuck home. What, do they call you shooter ironically? Come on, man! It was my first time using a bow. Sue me. It's hard to cook when you look at me like that. I always thought the best part of married life would be eating your wife's delicious home cooking. Up until now, I lived alone in a cheap apartment on a shoestring budget, either cooking my own meals or grabbing discount side dishes from the supermarket. Just having someone else cooking for my sake was heaven. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to stare. Are we having baked potatoes again? Potatoes don't have much flavor on their own, so I was thinking of cooking some beans as well. I don't know. Does that sound good to you? Cassandra pulled a pot onto the counter and let out a long, heavy sigh. The village chief had ordered us to be husband and wife, but there was no way Cassandra could just accept that without a second thought. I couldn't blame her, but I also couldn't help but be happy about it. Nope, totally. Nope. Oh, God. Totally fine by me. Is there something I can help with? A hunter's wife, she lectured, is supposed to cook for him when she's home. A man does the cooking for himself when he's out in the fields. Huh. I didn't even know that was a rule. I put on my best smile. I really didn't want to give Cassandra creeper vibes. Too late, buddy. You already have. She's already creeped out by you. And backed away to give her some space. That's easier said than done when you live in a tiny shoebox of a house. The best I could do was sit on my bed watching my wife as she worked. Please don't call her your wife. Ugh. Cassandra finished getting the stock pot ready, placing the bones inside and slowly bringing it up to a boil to make broth. She tossed in some chickpeas along the way, a couple carrots from the field, and a few onions we'd gotten from the neighbors. She gently ladled the soup as it bubbled and simmered. Since I'm making the broth from fox bones, she said, I can't guarantee that it will taste that good. Yeah, I guess foxes aren't all that delicious, are they? Oh, I didn't mean. I know you went through all the trouble to catch it for us. So I wasn't saying. I didn't mean that. Oh my God. She didn't look upset at me at all. She looked flustered, in fact, as she tripped over her words to explain itself. It's all right, I said gently. I didn't take it that way at all. I'll make sure to bring home some tastier meat next time. Besides, I'd love to eat anything you made. Well, thank you. Thanks for saying that. She blushed, gazed at the floor, and I thought that newlywed life might not be so bad after all. My dude, you never had a problem with this from the get-go. Why are you pretending that you did? Jesus Christ. Shooter here, dealing with terrible case of updog. What's that? What's updog? Not much. I'm not bullshitting here. Okay, it's not even, the camera's not picking it up. Cool. Perfect. Okay. Okay, we'll take my word for it. I'm not ad-libbing. This is actually what this book says. Shooter here, dealing with a terrible case of up dog. What's that? What's up, dog? Not much, dude. How about you? Well, not much up besides my wiener. And I'm not talking about the dog. Jesus Christ. I went out hunting again with Wakuro. When I got back home, Cassandra was nowhere to be found. There were no pens or paper in this world, so she couldn't leave me a note or anything. The laundry hung drying near the front door and boiled. Beans and eggs sat hot and ready on top of our well-worn table. It seemed like a lot of food for just one person, so I assumed some of it was for me. I also told her I was going to check on the snares before I left, and she knew I hadn't brought a meal for the road. Cassandra didn't seem to be coming back no matter how long I waited, so I gave up and ate the food she left in glum silence before going to sleep. I was feeling lonelier than usual. So I laid myself in my... No. I was feeling lonelier than usual, so I laid myself in my wife's bed and went to sleep smelling her scent. Hence the up dog. Shooter? When I finally woke up, I saw Cassandra, confused and frightened at why my flag was at full mast. What the fuck? Why? When I woke up, I saw Cassandra, confused and frightened at why my flag was at full mast. Standing next to her was an older man, covered in a dense, thick layer of hair. Who the hell? The man stroked his beard. How about you put on some clothes? He tossed me a loincloth. Good morning, everyone. Cassandra, who would this be? I launched out of bed and nearly leaped into my skimpy loincloth. I couldn't just leave my flexing little guy exposed. I couldn't just leave my flexing little guy exposed. This, said Cassandra, is my father. Your father? My father's nephew. Good to know that my dead father-in-law hadn't climbed out of his grave at least. This guy was about my height, but a little wider around the waist. His chest hair neatly burst from the gap in his V-neck tunic, a tangled mess that ran down to his thick arms. He looked like a bear who'd figured out facial hair. I'm Cassandra's cousin, Cassandra, he said bluntly. Ah, cool. Their family had a name thing going. I offered him a handshake with one hand while covering my crotch with the other. Look, I'm sorry, but if someone's covering their crotch with one hand and I'm trying to shake your hand with the other, I wouldn't shake that hand. You don't know where it's been. Well, I don't want to know where it's been. Oh my god. Speak of the devil. I offered him a handshake with one hand while covering my crotch with the other, but wouldn't you know it, all he did was stare back at me. Rude people, I swear. Okay. I came because I heard Cassandra got herself a husband. That's you then? Yep, the name's Shooter. Pleasure to meet ya. I'm following in the footsteps of Cassandra's father, working as an apprentice hunter, I said with a quick, sharp bow of my head. You used to be a warrior too, he said, or that's what they're saying. Wouldn't you seem pretty well you seem pretty well put together. Here, I've got a wedding gift for you. Food too. You don't have to do all that for us, said Cassandra. Thank you so much for this, I said, bowing still more deeply. Cassandra's wedding gift to us was a new weapon, a short sword, useful, and I could pawn it off if things got tight, but I still would have appreciated some pants. Except it wasn't for me. This is a present for you, Cassandra. You toiled day in and day out. You deserve a reward for that.
Cassandra.
The two of them turned and stared. The two of them turned and stared deep into each other's eyes. The two of them turned and stared deep into each other's eyes, very, very deeply into one another's eyes. Make a husband the third wheel deeply. So, I said tightly, what brings you here today?
Cassandra is a blacksmith, Cassandra replied.
Huh? Great, and?
You mentioned the other day that I should learn how to smith, right? I thought it would be faster to just introduce you to Cassandra. I can only do simple things like putting arrowheads on arrows, after all.
Huh? A blacksmith? Oh, the joke I made yesterday. She'd taken it completely seriously. Hunters need to make sure their equipment is all taken care of, said Cassandra, and that includes things like their spears and arrowheads. You're thinking ahead. I admire that. Thanks. But if you don't put on some clothes, you're going to burn yourself in the forge. I don't know why Cassandra has his voice, now that I know that he's like a bear of a man, but it's too late to go backsies. This is his voice now. This is what he sounds like. He's built like a bear, sounds like Mickey Mouse. That's him. Yeah, maybe I get that a lot. Not like I could do anything about that without clothes. What? You like being naked? No. Nah, I just don't have anything to wear except vests. I'm good on vests. I've got vests for days, I said. Cassandra handed me one of them and I slipped it on. Give me one sec. What? No, I don't have anything to wear except vests. I'm good on vests. I've got vests for days, I said. Cassandra handed me one of them, and I slipped it on. If you help out in the forge, I'll pay you. You can use the cash to buy yourself some clothes. Hey, that sounds great. I'd be happy to. That was how I ended up going along with my wife's cousin to work at the blacksmith's forge. When I asked if she was coming with us, she turned me down.
No, I've got chores. I'll try not to burn down the houses, you said.
Yeah, yeesh. Alright, so maybe we weren't on the same wavelength. There I was, standing out behind a blacksmith's forge with nothing but a hand axe chopping wood in the buff. Deja vu. It was hot, which is why I'd forgone wearing clothes again. My vest would reek to high heaven if I got sweat soaked onto it, and Shooter Jr. kept bouncing out of my tiny loincloth whenever I really got into the axe swing of things. At least being naked made it way easier to move around. Cassandra would carry the wood away with a look of thinly veiled shock on his face as he watched me work in my skimpy outfit. How's the hunting coming along anyway? He asked me at one point. I managed to get myself a lynx the other day, but that was it. We didn't catch a single one after that, even after setting up a bunch of traps. Not surprised. The guys are pretty hard to take down. I've been going out hunting with a veteran hunter named Wakaru. Huh, that's so. We didn't get a lynx, but we at least managed to nab a fox on the way back home yesterday. Good. A fox pelt will make that loincloth look half decent. I didn't know about that, but if people thought it looked better, then maybe it was worth a try. I'd ask Wakaru if I could have the fur once he was done skinning it. From what I heard, a forge needed a ton of wood to function. Blacksmiths got their own wood, then chopped it up into charcoal. I made a deal to help out with that for a bit. And in exchange, Cassandra would teach me how to sharpen my spear and even eventually make arrowheads. Now I had a place to work when prey died down. As an aside, it turned out that despite looks, Cassandra was only a little over 20 years old. Damn, how was he younger than me? Is it really okay that we're not doing any smithing today? I asked.
There's 5 of us here at the forge. They said it was all right to train you for the day.
Seems like you must be pretty busy then.
You said your name's Shooter, right?
Yeah.
You gonna stay in this village forever?
My axe split another log. I stopped to turn and look at him. Cassandra stared back at me, wearing a stone serious expression on his bearded face. I mean, I'm married here after all. I hadn't really given any serious thought to what came next. Here I was, a Japanese guy from another world, and this had to be another world instead of the past or future, with all the goblins and wyverns. Who knew if I would be able to find a way to make it back to the world I came from? I thought of that dream from this morning. Maybe it was me, reliving everything up until I wound up here. Or maybe it was the last memories before my death. If I had died, then that would mean I was reborn in this world. If I hadn't, then surely something transported me here. Reborn, though? Really? I still looked the same as I had back in my own world, and all of my memories were intact. If I somehow bit the big one right before coming here, then I'd be reborn as a middle-aged man. And reborn without clothes? Whoa, what a blessing. If I'd been reborn, I didn't even get to be a baby, just a naked 32-year-old. Thanks, God, love it, so good.
If you're staying, said Cassandra, then you better get ready for what's coming. Hunters get a lot of flack in this village, so it ain't easy being one here. Life was nothing but one hardship after another for my uncle.
They're showing then. I considered what the reason could be as I swung away at the wood. When I was used to the work, so I could let my mind wander a little. The first reason hunters might get shunned, inconsistent work. If they didn't bring anything home for them from the hunt, then it was like what Wakaru said. They were perceived as nothing more than freeloaders living off what the village provided for them, providing nothing in kind. The feast-famine setup was the reason why hunter-gatherers eventually learned how to farm. Agriculture allowed people to live much more stable lives. Sure, they probably had their share of bad harvests, but stockpiling food solved that problem. Also, if life was already tough for a given family, it must have been that much harder to find someone to marry their children to. I didn't know if marrying for love happened in this world, but I bet it was probably taboo at best, maybe reserved for actual developed towns at worst. In villages like this one, village chiefs or parents probably played matchmaker, just like what happened with Cassandra and me. I could see then why no parent would want to marry their daughter off to a hunter. On the other hand, there also might not be anyone willing to marry the daughter of a hunter, like Cassandra, which probably got hunters treated even more like parasites to be shunned. On top of that, there was this tendency for goblins to take jobs as hunters. Not many parents would want their daughters marrying goblins, from what Wakaru said. Goblin discrimination. They must have been the lowest position on the village totem pole. Oh, yay, racism, my favorite. It just seemed to be a thing in fantasy worlds. Even hobgoblins got more respect, if only a sliver.
I'll help if you want to leave, Cassandra said as he gathered up some of the wood.
Leave the village, you mean?
Right. I doubt anyone here would be happy to see an outsider like you sticking around, and I'm sure they wouldn't care if you got up and left.
What about Cassandra? If I left her, things would just get worse for her.
True. This isn't something to consider lightly. If you ever decide to run away, I can at least get some money ready for you. If you're staying, you best be ready to work. Work if you want to earn everyone's trust. Warrior, stranger, this is your path to choose.
Leaving me with those words, Cassandra disappeared into the forge. Okay, prediction. I hope beyond hope that this entire novel isn't just this dude hunting, because real talk, him hunting is the most boring thing I've ever read. Like, I'm not excited when he caught that lynx. I'm not excited when he went out and didn't catch the lynx the next day. That was definitely the slowest part of the day. We could have just had, we went out hunting, we didn't catch anything, and then been done, because that doesn't progress the plot like at all. But whatever. I'm praying that this somehow turns into like something that isn't just him hunting the entirety of the novel, but probably will be.
I gave a lot of I gave a lot of thought to Cassandra's words. Sure, I was born in the sticks, but I was never ostracized, especially since my grandparents had been such social people. My grandma was so well known where we lived that they made her the vice president of the local fishing co-op. Back home life was easy. Now, not that people weren't shunned at all. There was at least one family who everyone avoided. Maybe they were shunned. Never thought about it until now. They had a girl who was about the same age as me. Okay, so what is this train of thought? Not that people weren't shunned at all. There was at least one family who everyone avoided. Maybe they were shunned. Never thought about it until now. They had a girl who was about the same age as me, but we never played together much. She was usually with her younger sister, so my sisters and I never really talked with them. Maybe now I knew how it felt to be in a family like that, marrying someone above my station, even if only a little. It was going to be rough if I kept living here. I need a strong will. I'd have to build up my status in the village to really show the villagers that I was worth keeping around. Once in my old world, I had this part-time job. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Once in my old world, I had this part-time job at a marketing firm. They mainly propose no, there's no fucking way that a part-timer without a degree got a job at a marketing firm. I'm sorry. Like a degree and no like experience in that area. That's not how that works. No, this is awful. No. Once in my old world, I had this part-time job at a marketing firm. They mainly proposed products, new ideas to clients, or found ways to improve projects in progress. Consulting, basically. It was a small company, so my days there consisted of trying to drum up business alongside this young guy, the representative director of the firm. He told me there were a few tested ways to get a client to agree with our ideas. First, you hook them on the idea, and then you show them that it's achievable. I'd make a slideshow doing just... There's no... Okay, I'm sorry. This attacks me on a personal level. My sister is a marketing business person, and, like, you can't even get into this industry without being in marketing school. Like, I get if you're in college currently and you have enough of proof that you're good enough at it, like she was. Like, she had to work pretty hard to get her internship doing, like, literally the job they're describing. So, this is really infuriating. I'd make a slideshow doing just that with this awful program that I hate using. You're probably familiar with it. Fucking... I didn't expect to read this book and feel personally attacked. They just dissed PowerPoint. They just dissed Microsoft PowerPoint. PowerPoint is the gift of the gods. You do not come out here in front of me and insult Microsoft PowerPoint. If you think that Microsoft PowerPoint is awful and hate using it, you are a sheep. You have never actually Microsoft PowerPointed if you think that it's an awful program. If you cannot accept Microsoft PowerPoint as your one true editing program, then I have no words for you. Get out. Don't talk to me again. Don't write this dribble and publish it where you I'm sorry. I can't fucking believe Buck Naked and Another World really came for me like this. This book really decided to come out here, and I could forgive it for not knowing how karate works. I could forgive it for having a 32-year-old get married to a 16-year-old girl. But the moment that out of fucking nowhere, this fantasy novel shit on my boy, my lad, my favorite program on the planet, Microsoft PowerPoint, now we have a problem, okay? Now I'm mad. I'd make a slideshow doing just that with this awful program that I hate using. You're probably familiar with it. And then the director would clean up my rough draft. Clients would always went for the ideas that grabbed their attention. The next step would be to earn the client's trust by getting to know the top brass. That's not a job you would get as a part-timer. Department heads, managers, whoever, get those guys on your side, and you could
get even the most outrageous ideas approved. Easy peasy. No, it fucking isn't. This is like one of you can't get into this industry without any background or education. I'm sorry. I'm really upset. This is hitting too close to home. Now, who was the top brass in this village? Bingo, the village chief. First things first, I had to get her to accept me. With a governor on my side, and a knight at that, with all that power and privilege that entailed, no one would even try to ostracize me. Even if people had a bone to pick with me, they wouldn't dare say it out loud if I had enough prestige. And hell, if I got the village chief on my side, then she wouldn't tolerate it either. If I was going to make that happen, I needed actual results. A consulting firm's goal was to bring in sales, whether for the client's business as a whole or for the individual projects. If I was going to apply the same logic here, I'd either have to somehow broadly improve the lifestyle of the village, or I'd have to bring in something big as a hunter. That would really mean busting my ass to get better, maybe even good enough to take down a lynx or two without breaking a sweat. I wiped the sweat from my brow, a whole lot of options and none of them perfect. Still, it was a beautiful, cloudless day. A refreshing breeze blew as I worked. Suddenly, I spotted a strange black cloud in what should have been a cloudless blue sky. It sped through the air too quickly. It couldn't be a cloud at all, not moving that fast, and plummeted towards the earth at a breakneck speed. Someone screamed out, "Wyvern!" My name's not Burn, Chief, I thought, like an idiot. The villagers poured from their homes, panicking and crowding. It's a wyvern! Sure was, and it was going after the livestock. Okay. In my old world, wyverns were nothing more than the product of someone's imagination. Here, the wyvern was a living, breathing, and big, about the size of a small bus, matter of fact. Its maw gaped wide, revealing rows and rows of needle-sharp teeth, and hard scales lined its body from head to long, long tail, so long that the beast was a half-tail. King of the lizards, I thought deliriously. The lizard king intended to pick off cows from a spot near the center of the village. The poor things were just chewing their cud, safe and out in the pasture, when the wyvern started tossing them screaming to the ground, sinking its razor talons into their bloated bodies. The wyvern was strong. Some villagers shouted and pointed at it, while others peeked out from behind shelter to watch. No one even tried making a move on the beast. Not that I could blame them. Most of the villagers were farmers and their families, not the type liable to charge at the scaly lizard bus of the skies. Only a veteran hunter like Cassandra's father would have stood a chance against it.
What's all the ruckus out here, shooter?
Cassandra cried, running out with an armful of charcoal. It's a wyvern, Cassandra! Look! The charcoal spilled from his arms. He stared for a moment in mute horror.
A wyvern,
he said finally.
But why?
I don't know. It just came flying in all of a sudden.
How can this be happening?
We all just stood there, staring as the wyvern devoured its prey. That's when I saw them. A brave group of challengers racing to fight the king of the skies. It was the hunters, and Wawakaru led the charge. They were decked out in hunting gear, almost as if returning from a hunt. And they weren't the only ones charging. The village chief, her son Gamul, and a bunch of others, all armed to the teeth, marched to battle the beast. Even Naniwa, the woodcutter, was among them in the back lines. The two groups darted between houses for cover, zigzagging and weaving their way to the wyvern. Wawakaru and the hunters split into two smaller groups. The first group carried countless bows and quivers, and the second bore spears. Made sense. One would rush in to attack directly. The rest would lay down, covering fire. The wyvern seemed to ignore them completely, ripping and tearing at its beefy feast, slurping down entrails, all that nasty stuff. I heard that larger mammalian carnivores only ate their prey after tearing out their throats to finish them off, but I could still hear the cow under its claws crying out as the wyvern ate. It was a vicious old lizard, through and through. The village chief's group met up with the bow-carrying hunters, and they began debating furiously over their next move. The village chief wore a simple breastplate over her usual flowing dress, probably because that was all she had time to don before checking out the commotion outside. A long sword dangled from her waist, the typical weapon of your traditional female knight. I only had been able to stare on until now, dumbfounded, but watching her clicked my brain right back on. I couldn't let this continue. I wouldn't let this continue. No way would that wyvern capture the village chief like the female knights from my porn mags. Just as soon as I almost forget that this is a light novel, it has to remind me, and then I feel pain again. That'd be bad enough, but the wyvern might not even let her say the same lines they did before eating her. If I wanted to make a name for myself in this village, then now was the time to put my spear skills to good use. What could possibly go wrong? Not that I really needed a reason to protect a pretty lady. Spear, I muttered to myself and turned to Cassandra. Do you have any weapons in the forge? Preferably something with reach.
We do, but what are you going to?
Just let me borrow it for a bit. A pole arm even. Anything like that.
If you want something long, we should have spears, halberds, perhaps some two-handed maces,
he replied, bewildered. Sure, just go get one for me, I said, pushing him along.
Are you actually thinking of taking on that thing? That wyvern's a full-grown male.
The village chief is going to get devoured by that wyvern, and I'm not going to just stand by. I burst into the forge, almost knocking over the dwarf blacksmith, and scanned the room. Cassandra, what the hell is this? The dwarf shouted.
He's my cousin's husband, boss. He said he wanted to borrow some weapons.
No weapons in this room. I turned back to Cassandra. Weapons? Where are they?
The longer ones are up in that room. The good spears are in the back. The decent maces are up front.
Ignoring the dwarf, I ran into that room. I grabbed the spear furthest to the back. No time to take a close look, and ran back outside. Cassandra came after me.
Don't do anything stupid. You'll break Cassandra's heart if you get yourself killed.
Sure I will. We haven't even hugged.
Her father was killed by a wyvern too. You must know that. Do you really want her to go through this again?
Okay, you know what? Enough was enough. Listen, man, I snapped. I might have stared directly at her while she took a big ol'... God fucking damn it. I hate this so much. Listen, man, I snapped. I might have stared directly at her while she took a big old dump back at the house, but we're nowhere near close to being a husband and wife yet. If I die, how about you marry her? You think I haven't noticed the way you look at her? With him blabbling nonsense, I unsheathed my borrowed spear and got myself ready to make a break for it. The wyvern raised its head high over the shreds of cows and unleashed an earth-shaking roar. The very air trembled. Dread carried on sound waves. The roar was the last straw for Wakaru and the other hunters. The group providing cover fire pulled their bowstrings back in unison. Damn, I better go if I want to show off my spear work. I'm not going to let myself get shunned by the village forever. After all, I said, flashing a wild grin at Cassandra. I took off after the wyvern. I was goddamn terrified. Can you blame me? The only thing I'd ever faced in a fight were a couple of drunks at a restaurant, a guy who got to second place at nationals for karate, and some indie pro wrestlers in Gamul. Where the fuck would he have fought indie pro wrestlers? Try to imagine that version of me getting asked to fight a tiger with chopsticks or something wild like that. But at the moment, something in my brain chased my fear into the recesses of my mind. Adrenaline. Just like when it kick-started my body in karate matches, adrenaline writhed to life, and all of my fear, all of my doubt, melted away. The battle was already underway as I ran towards the wyvern, while Wakaro and the other hunters were almost perfectly synchronized, sending their first volley of arrows flying towards the beast end. In no time flat, the hunters providing cover fire loosed their next volley. They weren't aiming at any particular spot, since the wyvern was so large you could hit it as long as you aimed at its general direction. The second group of hunters took up their weapons and charged towards the monster. The wyvern let out another bellowing roar that resounded across the village. My legs turned to jelly. I collapsed on the spot. There went the adrenaline. That golden, invincible feeling disappeared completely. I fell about 50 yards away from the wyvern. The king of the skies towered over me. Funny, it looked even bigger close up. I was scared stiff. Okay, I'm just looking at how long this chapter is. Jesus Christ. Okay, so the last chapter was like 10 pages. This one is over 70 pages long. Why? 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 So I've got 50 more pages of this chapter to read. Jesus Christ. You know, everything in this world was very ridiculous. A brave goblin who had gone to attack the wyvern went flying with a single swipe of the monster's tail. Everyday people with everyday lives just don't see people going full on ragdoll physics through the air. Now I had, and not because I used to work as a stunt. Now I had, and not because I used to work as a stuntman. No, there was a goblin hunter whose name I didn't even know, tracing a perfect arc in the sky before my very eyes until, well, I didn't look to see that part. The next man took advantage of the goblin's sacrifice and charged with his spear. The wyvern flapped its wings as it backstepped. The gust sent the man flying backwards. The wyvern, clever guy, took the chance to rip into the man with his powerful maw. His dying scream froze my blood. God, it was merciless. The rest of the hunters faltered, spreading out to surround the wyvern at a distance. The archers stopped providing covering fire, not wanting to hit their fellow hunters. Not that it mattered. The arrows hadn't pierced a single scale. Swords drawn, the village chief's group joined the hunters surrounding the wyvern. I managed to get myself back on my feet and caught up with them. I talked so big back at the forge, but I just ended up freaking out, falling on my butt and making myself look pathetic. I'd be laughed at for weeks if we made it out alive, I was sure. "You'll have to retreat, please," Gamul begged the village chief. "I am in charge of this village. I will not back down. I will not allow myself to back down." "Then I beg for you, at least stay in the back line." As they bickered, the hunters loosed another wave of arrows. The wyvern never dropped its guard, not even for a second. It spun, deftly snapping at its tail at its attackers. One brave soul had the will to slay the monster, a single goblin who seemed to step above the other hunters. He wore leather armor over his fur pelts and wielded a mace in each hand. The village chief barked her order. "We only have one goal. Strike the blow that drives out the beast." The goblin charged forward. He had to be Sakicho, the leader of the hunters, Walker, who told me about. I'd seen him when I fought with Gamul, too. As the leader of the hunters closed in on the wyvern, the other hunters took up their weapons and I joined them. "Oh, you're here too, shooter," the village chief teased. I ignored it for now. Sakicho wailed on the wyvern's stomach, pounding furiously with his maces before rolling out of the way. No dice! The wyvern snapped at the goblin, its razor-sharp fangs gleaming, as a hail of arrows came down on its vast wings. The wyvern let out a high-pitched screech. The wings, I thought as it began to beat its massive wings. Those had to be its weak point. Airborne now, the wyvern raised its deadly claws and set its sights on the village chief. "I'm no action star, all right. I mean, I've been a stuntman." "Of course you have." "That's not nothing. It also has nothing to do with a gigantic wyvern. I've been beat up by people charging at me on horseback for a shoot. But I reiterate that those people were not, as far as I know, gigantic wyverns. But, hell, if I wanted the village to owe me a favor, this was the moment." And here's an illustrated image. There's our boy right there, or right here. And then there's the wyvern. So, yeah. It's illustrated. Wow. The Wyvern was big, but I only had to wait until the last second to dodge, just like I had with those horseback riders. Well, not exactly like that. In a way, this job was going to be way easier. I threw my spear aside and sprinted with everything I had, making a beeline for the village chief, leaping into the air and wham, tackling her out of the way. The wyvern let out another roar, turning its claws towards me. The village chief fell flat on her butt from my tackle and only looked on in a daze. I drew the short sword Cassandra had given us as a wedding present. Maybe it was pointless, but I wasn't going down without a fight. Huh. That was really a possibility. Dying at worst, maimed forever at best. No wonder smart hunters stuck to ambushes. Right when I'd given up hope, the goblin hunter clad in fur pelts swung his mace right into the wyvern's ugly, scaly face. With a sickening crunch, the weapon connected with the monster's snout, and it reeled back in agony. Oh, thank God, I was saved. Get the village chief out of here now. The village. Oh no, I can't use that accent. Okay. Different voice. Get the village chief out of here now, the goblin hunter yelled. I nodded, grabbed the village chief's arm, and yanked her to her feet. Surprisingly enough, the village chief just followed along with me, all the color drained from her face. No way in hell was I letting that wyvern get its claws on her. I'm leaving the Oh, wait. I don't even know what accent I was using. I'm just going to use a random one. I'm leaving the village chief in your hands, the hunter shouted before turning back to face the wyvern. What a guy. He reminded me of my old karate teacher from Okinawa, who took me in way back then. Not that I got to know my savior that well, because those were the last words he ever spoke. He wasn't careless. He wasn't stupid. He was just one man up against a creature with the strength to dominate the skies. Moment of silence. Okay. Moment is over. The next moment, the wyvern unleashed a thunderous roar. Roar! Okay, let's just pretend that was a thunderous roar. Raw and powerful, it emanated pure rage. There was a magic to it, I was sure. Something to make your head freeze up. When I turned back to look at the goblin, he was completely frozen in place, arms still raised as if in mid-assault. But it was over. The wyvern sunk its dreadful claws into the goblin hunter, spread its enormous wings wide, and took off into the sky. The magic from the roar seemed to wear off for Wakaru, who readied his bow as he shouted an order to the rest of the hunters. Don't let it get away! Fire! All too late. The loosened arrows traced an arc through empty sky before falling to the ravaged ground. The wyvern climbed higher up into the air, circling the village just once before disappearing towards the mountains far away beyond the ape-gut forest. For the first time, I was invited into the village chief's manor. As for the village chief herself, she was so shocked by the wyvern attack that she couldn't even walk by herself. Gamul had tried to lend her a hand, but she refused him. In a hushed voice, she insisted that I do it. Oh my God, here we go again. Probably because she lost control of her bladder out of fear. As she crumpled to her knees, watching the wyvern carry off the goblin hunter, a yellow puddle formed around her. I imagine she hadn't wanted her son to touch her after that. I didn't think it mattered. Gamul had already seen it after all, but asking for my help instead of his was probably her last-ditch effort to keep some shred of pride. But if it was a matter of pride, why was she okay with me touching her? Maybe because she hadn't considered me human, what with me sitting at the very bottom of the social ladder. 3 dead, 1 gravely injured, and 1 missing. There was also 1 cow killed, the village chief said. Oh wait, that was the wrong voice. 3 dead, 1 gravely injured, and 1 missing. There was also 1 cow killed, the village chief said, falling back into her role and pretending that she definitely did not piss, and in fact maybe you were the one who pissed. Anyway, our missing villager was the goblin who had been carried off by the wyvern, the leader of the hunters, Sakasho. The gathering
included Wawaguro and the hunters, the top brass of the village, and only those who worked in the chief's manor. The only reason I was included in this was because I carried the village chief home. I leaned against the wall in the corner of the room, fiddling with the short sword Cassandra had given me as a marriage present. We need to decide on a course of action, said the village chief. Well, Wakaru, is it possible to rescue Sakacho? If you're asking if we can get him back alive, he said slowly, choosing his words carefully, then no. That's impossible. Can we recover his remains? It depends on if we can reach the wyvern's nest. The thing was, the wyvern hadn't attacked us at first. It just wanted to move on to munch on some cow. Oh shit, I just found a typo. It just wanted to munch, instead of saying munch, it says much. Much on some cow. Yay. I love it. I love finding typos in books. It only got hostile when we interrupted it, which was probably why it carried off Sakicho to get a sort of revenge. The other villagers weren't thinking about its motives and just wanted to get him back. I got where they were coming from though, and I felt for that. Once a wyvern acquires a taste for people, it means they're sure to attack again. Isn't that right, Wawakuro? Right. He forced his words through gritted teeth. We can't let it get away with this. It's an animal. Anyone could become a target, including the children of our village. We must prevent that from happening at all costs. Even if we gather all the people we can from the village and surrounding settlements, I'm afraid it won't be enough. I've never seen such a massive male. Cassandra's father lost his life trying to use traps to take down a desperate wyvern, one who was just encroaching on human territory because it didn't have enough prey for the winter. If a hunter was up against that kind of weakened creature, or a female, or perhaps a younger wyvern, then maybe they'd have a chance to win with traps and clever tactics. But it was a completely different story when it came to a male who'd already lived for a century, maybe more. A human-made trap could only do so much against a beast like that, and when 100 years of hungry scales and teeth came flying at you, what could anyone do against that? The village chief sat back in her armchair. Gamule, she said. At your service. Take a horse to town as soon as possible. Request adventures. We need reinforcements. Understood. It wasn't a problem that a single village could handle, and she knew it. With a nod, Gamule made to leave the room. On his way out, he stopped and whispered to me in a low voice, just when I was mid-scratch on Little Shooter. Oh my god. I have no right to ask you this, but make sure my mother doesn't do anything reckless. Aye, sir, she'll be good and protected. Don't get too full of yourself. I didn't know if he was trying to ask me a favor or pick a fight, but I wished he'd make up his damn mind. At least he left the room, probably for the stables. As we wait for the adventurers to arrive, said the village chief, we will remain alert. Post a lookout on top of the village tower to keep an eye on our surroundings. The mutiny are yours, Wawakaru. Understood, chief. We will also hold funerals for those who perished in the attack. Melia, go tell the other villagers that we shall make arrangements as soon as possible. Of course, Miss Alexandria, said a servant. She bowed and headed for the exit, but not before giving me a silent look, just like a mule had all those ages ago. I happened to be scratching my ass, I'll admit, but that hardly seemed necessary. More importantly, I knew that the village chief's name was Alexandria. It was Alexandria. It was an impressive number of syllables. As for you, Shooter. Yes, ma'am? You seem to be fine despite the fact that you're covered in blood. How are your wounds? Huh? Covered in what? So, hey, I was covered in blood. I guess I hadn't noticed it because of all that adrenaline, but at some point, I went from not having a huge bloody gash in me to having a very big, extremely bloody gash across my chest. Somehow, the wyvern hadn't even touched me. Also, oh my god, ow, ow, holy shit, it hurts. I can only apologize, she said sheepishly. That was my fault. I was rushed to the only church in the village to see my wounds. How had I gotten them? Simple. When I pushed the village chief away from the wyvern, her sword ended up slashing me across the chest. So lame. I hadn't done a thing in the wyvern fight, and in the process, I slashed myself open. Hey, at least there was no prolonged hospital visit. This being a fantasy world, a pastor and a deacon at the church could apparently use holy magic to patch me up. The deacon in particular was supposed to be an expert in this stuff, curing lacerations and flesh wounds whenever the villagers needed his help. I was rolled in with the other wounded hunters from the Wyvern fight, and I found myself spread out on a bed in the church. I thought you looked fine before, despite all the blood, said the village chief, and it seems it really was the only gash on you. I should have been worried after all. Despite her words, I could see Alexandria, Jesus Christ, Alexandria tearing up a little. This was a woman with enough mental fortitude to completely ignore the fact that she wet herself in front of me. But here she was, shedding a tear over me getting hurt. There really were some cute parts of her deep down. Well, I said, the deacon's already patched me up, thanks to you. Yes, we're going to need warriors like you, so I'm glad to see your wounds weren't serious. Very sweet. Then she was done, walking to the bedridden hunter right next to me and using the same concerned tone on him. Just when I thought she really was worried for me too. It was all lip service. Another pitch-perfect performance from the chief of the village. Black. Okay, this is the type of incel bullshit that I really, cannot stand. So, to reiterate what just happened, this lady was concerned for him because she's a member of her village. He's like, oh, yay, she's concerned for me. And then she's concerned for other people that are part of her village, and he gets pissed about that. Wow.
Seems like your wounds have all healed up, said the deacon. You're free to leave now.
Thanks for taking care of me.
You may feel a bit lightheaded from loss of blood, so make sure to eat plenty of meat to get your strength back. Also, it pains me to inform you that, well...
Yes?
Your vest is positively soaked in blood, far too unsanitary to keep around for you to even wear. We took the liberty of disposing of it.
Slashed open and once again in the buff, I started on my way home. As I left the clinic that was connected with the church, I found Cassandra and Wawakaru waiting outside. Wawakaru jumped to attention. Hey, they let you out already? It wasn't a very deep cut. Closing it with healing magic pretty much did the trick.
Gotcha, you're one of the lucky ones then.
As Wawakaru and I talked, Cassandra stared at me with an expression of concern.
Why, was she
here too?
I told her to come. Well, kinda. When I told her that they took you to the church to get healed up after the Wyvern, she got all panicked, rushed right out to come see you.
Sorry about that, I said, turning to her. I didn't mean to trouble you. No, it was no trouble, she said, casting her eyes downward. Whoa, she was actually worried for me this time. I gave Wawakaru a nod. I'm sure she just couldn't sit around when thinking about what happened to her dad. Well, she started. Don't worry, Cassandra. Some wyvern won't do me in so easily. In fact, I wish all those other amateurs could have just stayed out of the way, flailing all over the place, making it so much harder for the real professionals. I joked. Cassandra wasn't laughing. I see. Annihilated by my wife. Wife annihilated. Yup. Is Cassandra all right? She asked. He was with you for the fight, wasn't he? I heard some people were injured. Killed, even. Of course she wasn't worried about me. I wasn't happy about it, but I tried my best to explain things as nicely as I could manage. Yeah, he's totally fine. He was holed up in the forge the whole time. He didn't get hurt when he fell after I grabbed a spear too. You know, risk my life to fight the deadly murderous wyvern, though. He's fine? Oh, thank goodness. Totally head over heels. I didn't complain. It was great that he was fine. He was only just a little terribly depressed. As for Wawakaru, he took a different tone. Hey, he said, taking me aside. You're just gonna let your wife worry for another guy like that? Come on, man up. Jesus Christ.
I mean, they are cousins. They've known each other pretty much their whole lives, so they're basically childhood friends, right? Back in my world, childhood friends falling in love with each other was a classic bullshit fantasy thing. All very well, except I was actually living a bullshit fantasy thing, so who was I to get in the way? Even if something about it rubbed me the wrong way, I was certain that they harbored feelings for one another. I put on my fake smile and tried to be considerate for my wife, like an adult. I bet Cassandra's still at the forge right now, I said to her. Want to go see him? No, that's all right. More importantly, what happened to your clothes? Oh, you mean the vest? The decon said it was unsanitary and tossed it. I'm sorry, I said with an apologetic bow. It's just the vest, she whispered softly. I'm glad it wasn't you. How sweet. Wait, hold up. Was she being nice to me? The funerals for the three dead villagers proceeded at the village communal graveyard. Okay. The funerals for the three dead villagers proceeded at the village's communal graveyard. We offered silent prayers for the fallen as the pastor recited his holy scriptures. But there were only a dozen or so people at the gathering. The dead had fought to protect us all, so you'd think more people would care. But it was only the village chief, the families of the victims, and fellow hunters. We hunters really were hated. I guess there was another reason. The village chief had ordered all livestock to be returned to their barns, as well as the villagers to not travel too far from their homes. But they could have at least showed up for a funeral. Even an outsider like myself and my wife came to pray for the departed. Absolutely heartless. Oh my god. Also, Shooter Jr. was shaffing all weird, so I had to shift his position a bit to focus on the grieving. You ever get so distracted by your dick at a funeral? Like, I don't know. It's just a common thing. Everyone's experienced it once or twice. It was customary to wear crimson red scarves at funerals in this world. It was a sign of mourning, and people wore them until the departed were reborn into their next life. As I listened to the pastor read on, I listened for more talk of being born into new worlds. Maybe I asked them more about their fantasy mythos when I had the time. It could wait. For now, I wanted blood. Wyvern blood. Specifically for the 3 hunters in caskets and the one carried off. When the funeral services ended, I started heading home with Cassandra when the village chief called out to me. You look unsatisfied. Is it the other villagers? I bet you're upset that they didn't show up for the funeral rites. No, not exactly, I said. It's more complicated than that. I'm sure they've got their reasons. Everyone has reasons. Today it's an old tale, one that says a wyvern pursues its prey with ferocious tenacity, even after death. They're worried the wyvern might come back for the corpses of the hunters? Mere rumor, but their spirits all the same. Disaster spreads its tendrils through the atmosphere. And I guess proximity to damage is like being close to the disaster itself. Like pollution. Not to mention that the dead were hunters, and who cared about hunters? Maybe the villagers were happy to be rid of a nuisance. Why? I started and realized it was too late to go back on my question. Does everyone hate hunters so much anyway? And it was the efforts of myself and my husband, the previous village chief, that paved the way for the development of this village, said the village chief. Hunters and woodcutters lived on these lands before we arrived. Is that right? I asked, turning to Cassandra. Yes, my father hunted in the ape-gut forest, even before this village was built. And Dora was an exceptional hunter, said Alexandria. Alexandria. The same thing can be said for Sakashu and the other hunters who lost their lives yesterday. I suppose Endor was Cassandra's father then. As for the villagers who colonized this place are concerned, the hunters are strangers, foreigners. I'm sure they'll blame the hunters for not finishing off the wyvern too. The thought made me furious. That's awful. What are we supposed to do against a monster like that? Silly question. That was the point. We were the scapegoats. All I know is that things won't calm down until that Wyvern is taken care of. In fact, the village chief gave a short cough before tucking her hair behind her ear, an ear that happened to be unusually pointed. Oh God, she was an elf, right? A hot elven knight who was also the ultra-capable village chief. Kill me now, Alexandria. The other night, she continued, the owner of the dead cow, Gintanan, filed a complaint with me. She stormed in and asked me who would compensate her and what she was supposed to do about feeding the rest of the cows when she wasn't even allowed to let them outside. It seemed that the village normally let the cows and sheep roam free to graze and eat whatever they could find. That the livestock were stuck in their barns. The expense of hay fell to their owners. Alright. I still have 30 more pages this chapter. I don't think I can read anymore. I didn't expect it to go on this long. So I'm going to stop here. Leave off where they're at a funeral. His dick is exposed because of course it is, and the hunters are being used as scapegoats. Good night and goodbye. And that has been Buck Naked in Another World, aka the worst book I have ever encountered.